So you don't have to make a whole new mold to alter or repair your mold. And I'm going to show you how I do it. This is the plug for that mold. I want to modify the mold, so that means I have to modify the plug first. I basically want this to roll around like that. Just not out very far, maybe that far, if I can get away with it being smaller without having too much of a sharp drop there. I only want it to come down maybe 10 mil, 3/8, something like that. So I want it to be rolled there and then sort of taper off flat or flattish. And then up here, I want a small lip underneath this. It'll look a lot nicer not having this raw fiberglass edge. Let's get into it. That is body filler or Bondo sculpting at its finest. Now you might be looking at this wavy edge going, oh, that's terrible. It doesn't matter, because from about here, yeah, probably about there, up is what I'm keeping. The rest of it will be getting cut off from the mold, not from here. So that's a nice round edge all the way along there, and then it squares off a bit. And this is a slight, very slight taper. Focus. You can see it's protruding out a little bit, and it comes down and then goes back into the beautiful rolled edge I put on there. It'll help it look better, and it also help with the door trim fit up. Now onto the mold. Now I've re-sculpted the buck here, made that rolled over and then put the flange along there. I'm gonna have to chop this. I'm gonna chop it from about here all the way along, probably about there, all the way up to the windscreen post, and then put a new flange wall in all the way up to here, and this will be a separate part of the mold. Well, it'll be just like this basically. So it'll be a 7-piece mold, which is ridiculous, but it just is what it is. This part here, I'm just going to cut along here, feather this out with sanding or grinding, doesn't really matter, as long as I don't really damage the gel coat underneath. And then blend it, so fresh gel coat, fresh glass over the top to get this flange on here. Alright, so as you just saw, I just cut those 2 bits. Well, I only showed you one, but it's all good. And I sanded it, and I found that this guy is a filler speed file or rasp. Works well in fiberglass. Who would have thought? So I got that tapered, so it's nice and thin now. I didn't go to the gel coat. You don't need to. You just want a taper, just so there's not a huge step, because you're going to be putting gel and then glass. You don't want a huge step. So now I'm going to clean this mold, and then I'm going to prep that. I'm going to wax past where I need, so up to here, way down here, just way past where I need. I've got to clean it all up as well. Wax it, PVA it. But before I do that, I'm going to clean it and then sticky tape it. Right, got it all prepared. Now I'm ready to build my first wall. I'm thinking about building it off this so I don't peel up the PVA. I'm going to build it off here and then come up to about, I don't know, there roughly. So I have more glass. It's going to have a nice shape in it, so it'll be strong, but I don't want it to be sort of flimsy. I want it as big as I can get it. And then after I do these 2 halves, I can bolt these back on and then cut the rear, and then I won't have a flange on that. I'll just continue it round. But I've still got to remove some material so I can add it back for extra strength. So I'm going to build a wall out of Play-Doh. Check out that for a colourful wall. Pretty good. I sprayed a bit of extra PVA on here. See all these little light spots? That's where I sort of accidentally scratched it when I was tapping it down. This surface texture does not matter at all, as long as there's no holes in it. They can be as rough as guts, just like that. It won't matter because the gel will imprint on this, and then when I make the flange on the other side, the opposite flange, so you got flange, flange, the texture will imprint into the other flange and it'll act like a key. When you press the two together, they'll match, opposite match, you know, yin yang sort of thing. Put your bolts in it, it'll be fine. So you can spend hours getting this thing dead straight, and you put marbles in it if you want keys, doesn't matter. Right, I got the gel in there, and you see that big canyon? Oh, I call it a canyon. There's no way you can get fiberglass in there without there being a big air bubble, which I do not want that because I'm sick of air bubbles, bane of my existence. So I'm going to make up a paste with this. I've used this in my previous videos before. I used it in the boot lid mold, and even earlier than that in the very first mold I made. So this is, I call it cotton flock. I'm not 100% sure what it is, but it kind of looks like ground up fiberglass. So I'm going to use this, mix it in with some resin, catalyzed resin, and that creates a thick paste, and then you stick it in there like a fillet. So you want to fill it up and then create a nice curve where the fiberglass will lay against and go flat. Well, no air bubbles, that's the goal. No air bubbles, because it's hard to tell, but it's a deep trench. But I'm just going to sort of pour it in there. And then while it's still wet, fiberglass straight over the top of it. Lay out the area as normal. What wetting out the area does is helps to get resin behind the mat before it's laid down, and that way it'll penetrate easier. I'm not wearing a respirator because I'm talking to you while I'm doing this. And it's a very quick job, and I'm in a large ventilated space. Got all the excuses, this guy. All of them. Going with a bit of bigger stuff. You notice I got these scissors. I use these for cutting wet fiberglass. These are non-stick kitchen scissors. Just perfect for stuff like this. Of course, fiberglass sticks to them, but not as much as, and they're cheap, not as much as they would stick to normal, like my fiberglass cutting scissors. I also like to tear it. Not into bits, but if you tear it, it'll help it conform to curves better. And also tearing it separates the fibres, and then they get interwoven with everything else around it. I always like to build up my flanges more than the rest of them. This is a joint, it doesn't have to be super thick. I want to build up the flange so it is nice and thick. Nothing wrong with a thick flange. I just want to point out I'm by no means a professional fiberglass. I've been doing this for a year. I've been making, well, yeah, a year. When I made started making my first mold was a year ago. Started filming for YouTube at the start of last year, and then I started my channel in August. So I had a backlog of footage which I could fall back on. But not so much these days, thanks to school holidays and Christmas holidays. Used up most of my footage, so I'm running a couple of videos ahead, which is not where I wanted to be. Now that I'm happy with the thickness and the coverage, I'm going to roll it. One of these is a consolidating roller. This helps drive the air bubbles out and excess resin. And this is one of the most important steps, apart from mold prep. Mold prep is probably the most important, because if your mold sticks to whatever part you're making, you'll never get it out without breaking something. And that's the last thing you do. I accidentally broke this die. It was a freak accident, really. The tippy cart that it's on, came undone without me knowing, and it fell, and then the body hit, or the butt, the die, the plug, whatever you like to call it, hit the wheel, or the top of the wheel on this cart, and put a big crack in it right about here. So I had to cut the crack to relieve it because it was sort of overlapped, and then filled it with Play-Doh. And I was not happy at all. But that's the life of a plug or a die. They get abused and they get broken more often than not. In this bucket I have acetone. These are not consumables. These are like 15 or 20 bucks. So I don't want to ruin them. So the acetone will basically dissolve the resin, which is what I want. Here comes a tray. Then I've got a cloth. This is my acetone cleaning cloth. Clean that off there, put the handle in, wipe the handle. Now it's not sticky anymore. And these things come apart. Just with a flat blade screwdriver, I'm just going to drop the little retaining nut and the roller itself in there because the handle doesn't fit. Rinse off the handle. And you want to ideally do this while the resin's still wet. If it goes off on you, and if it goes off in here, you can save it. It's just a lot more work. So I'm just going to leave that in there. Put the lid back on because acetone evaporates extremely fast. So that bucket probably was about that full, and that's just all evaporation. So I've got this glassed up to here. So I've got the two flanges, the two extra bits. Pretty happy with them. There's the other one. Now it's onto the back bit. So exactly the same process as this. I'm not going to film it, but I'm going to explain it. So it's already been waxed and PVA'd. I'm going to put gel coat on it. A nice thick coat of gel coat. Then the glass. So it's going to be a bit tricky to get the glass to come over this edge and sit flat on here. So I'm going to have to clamp it like I did with the sides. So here's the underside of the boot section. That's what I'm calling this panel. This is the rear of the driver's compartment. See this line here? That's the join from when I put this lip on. These are the bits that I made for the door tops, and they bolt onto this little flange. I should have made it a bit bigger, but it doesn't matter. And that's the join line for the flange on there. And they turned out really good. That's how I do a mold modification. There's many ways to skin a cat, as they say, and there's also many ways to modify a mold. This is the way I do it. Some professionals might do it a different way, but this gets me good results. So I hope you enjoyed the video. Thanks for watching.